All right, good morning. Starting off the day, we're just going to have a introduction of the purpose of our webinar today, and we're going to also do some introductions through the chat. I was hoping to do introductions via a breakout room, which would be a little bit more interactive, but that requires a additional Zoom meeting license, which I'm not willing to pay exorbitant amounts for that. So we're just going to introduce via the chat today, and that's going to be good because we'll have plenty of time to get to know each other in our roundtable discussion at the end of the webinar today. So our general overview for the day, we are going to learn about the resources available through the California Fish Passage Forum. We're going to chat about utilizing expert knowledge to review and add to non-Caltrans records of barriers in anadromous watersheds to advance the QA/QC of the Passage Assessment Database, also known as the PAD. And we're going to have some time to discuss priorities, projects you're working on, successes to share, as well as issues that you're encountering in advancing your fish passage projects in Region 2. So as you all likely know, CDFW, there are anadromous waterways in regions 1 through 5 of the CDFW management regions in the state of California. We've already done expert review for regions 5, 4, and 3. And today we will be focusing on the North Central region, Region 2. So to kick things off for the day, something I would like to remind people of is our Fish Passage Expertise Assessment Survey. This is on Google Surveys. And I'm just going to pop this in the chat here. All right, in the chat is the link to our Google form. For the participants who have already filled this out, thank you very much. This form essentially allows us to help structure our expert reviews by determining who is working in what regions. If you have, I would like everybody to just take a second to open up this form using the link on the chat. You do not have to you don't have to do this survey during the webinar, but if you are able to do it within the day, that would be very helpful. Pop in the chat who you are generally, what your role is, and what brings you here, or what watershed you are working within. And we'll just give a few minutes for people to do that before we move on to our next agenda items. Based on what I'm seeing in the chat, we've got folks from CDFW, Water Audit California, American Rivers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Environmental Engineering, Salmon River Restoration Council, Friends of Auburn Ravine. We've got some folks from Lake County RCD, perfect. We've got some fisheries biologists in here. We've got some U.S. Geological Survey folks. Got some NOAA folks. It's excellent. Thank you all for being here today. Okay, you can continue putting those in the chat, but now I'm going to stop sharing just for a second, and we will have our panelists for today introduce themselves. I'll start off and then I'll pass it to my colleagues here. Again, I am Holly Steindorf. I coordinate for the California Fish Passage Forum, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about the forum in a couple slides, so I'll leave my introduction there.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ann Elston. I work for Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, and I manage the Passage Assessment Database. Thank you for being here, and I love hearing from all of you in the chat. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Neil Shiraga. I also work for Pacific States on the Passage Assessment Database, primarily with the PAD implementation and QA/QC plan. Thanks for being here today.
Morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Hampton, and I work for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife in Fisheries Branch on the anadromous program. I serve as a statewide aquatic connectivity coordinator, and I work closely with Ann and Neil day to day, and I'm part of the California Fish Passage Forum. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for Holly for putting this on, and for Ann and Neil for the hard work that they've done putting together today's presentation. So thanks so much again, and enjoy the presentation.
For those working in Region 1, there is plans to have a webinar for you. As Ann will discuss, the PAD QA/QC plan has been working from south to north. Regions 5, 4, and 3 have already been done. We're doing Region 2 today, of course, and then for Region 1, there's a wealth of information to discuss, and we will be holding expert review for Region 1 over likely the next few months. We are tentatively scheduling the Region 1 webinars likely for sometime in May and at the very latest into June. So when those webinars come up, we will send you an invite in order to participate and have good discussion about Region 1 barriers. I would just recommend just putting in the chat who you are if you've not done so already, and that you're interested in attending a Region 1 webinar. We'll make sure to grab your information from there and make sure you get an invite.
Though, I mean, outside of Region 2, excuse me, is still welcome to be, of course, on this webinar and to learn more. Thank you.
All right, let's resume. So the California Fish Passage Forum's mission is to protect and revitalize anadromous fish populations in California by restoring connectivity of freshwater habitats throughout their historic range. That includes a few different objectives, which I'll talk about in a second. I also wanted to just show off a forum-supported project led by Trout Unlimited in 2019 of the crossing of the skunk train over the Noyo River. It includes a really spectacular bottomless culvert here, which is designed to handle 100-year flood events with associated large woody debris traveling down the river, and it's makes for a pretty spectacular image. Our partners include federal agencies such as NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife. We also work closely with Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, which manages the PAD plan, employs Ann and Neil, and acts as the fiscal agent and helps us manage our grants for our funded projects. We also work with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and work closely with Andrew, who introduced himself earlier. We also have a few other state agencies involved closely, like California Department of Water Resources and state parks. We also work with Coastal Conservancy, Trout Unlimited, and Cal Trout. We structure our efforts through 7 strategic objectives. These include the direct funding of remediation and assessment projects through our yearly funding opportunity. I'll talk more about that in just a second. As a collaborative partnership, one of our main goals is just leveraging the expertise of our different organizations and working together to make sure we're maximizing our impact. We also work to collate and elevate resources for practitioners, including efforts to increase access to streamlined permitting options and outreaching the success of fish passage projects across our geographic scope. We are a nationally recognized fish habitat partnership under the umbrella of the National Fish Habitat Partnership. We also work closely with other fish habitat partnerships you may have heard of, including the Pacific Marine and Estuary Partnership and the Pacific Lamprey Conservation Initiative. For anybody interested in more information about the forum, we also have our strategic framework, which gives a lot of information about the history of the forum and our purpose, and that is available at cafishpassage.org. Some of our past work includes, as I alluded to, the direct funding of fish passage assessment remediation projects. We've funded 57 projects so far, and that number increases every year. Those projects together have removed more than 50 barriers. Removed actually a heck of a lot more than that if you count minor barriers remediated through a couple different projects, but those do include some larger barriers as well. Those projects have opened around 300 miles of habitat to target species, and we have supported with more than $1.7 million in funding since our founding, since we started supporting projects in 2013. Some of those projects include recently a symposium and data hub site examining the barriers to tidal connectivity across the Pacific coast up into Washington and the Puget Sound area. That was a partnership with Pacific Lamprey Conservation Initiative and Pacific Marine and Estuary Partnership. I'm going to be saving and publishing this presentation on the website. Anybody who wants to go and download it, these captions will turn into clickable links. So you'll be able to click to learn more about anything that you hear about today. We also have partnered in the past with Ross Taylor and Associates to produce a report examining fish passage monitoring methods across the state, acting to sort of synthesize a lot of the different efforts and get them into one document. So that's available on our website, as well as our quick barrier removal performance measures and monitoring sheet, which is meant to provide a straightforward means of examining comparatively the area of project before and after implementation. We also do outreach events and meetings. This is an image up top right, of our steering committee meeting last November in Santa Rosa, which included a number of agency partners who are not directly members of the forum. We also did a field tour of the Yellow Jacket Creek Fish Passage Project, which is one of the longest continuous stretches of boulder weirs in Region 2. That was pretty exciting. We've got a couple events coming up. Well, you're welcome to shout it out. Is anybody attending SRF coming up March 26th through 29th? Meg, I see some raised hands. Perfect. All right. I see several people who indicate they're coming to SRF. The evening of Thursday, I forget the date. Is that the 27th, 28th? Anyway, on Thursday of SRF, we're going to be doing a poster session. So feel free to come and say hi to us at the poster session. In a little less than a month, we'll be doing a funding and resources webinar on April 5th. I'll talk more about that in a moment. To answer questions about when we're going to be doing expert review for Region 1, we're going to be doing that, like I said, within likely early May or into June. And then in November of 2024, we're going to be doing a meeting in Sacramento with an associated field day and outreach event. Planning is still in the works for that, but we'll make sure to post it on our newsletter when we have more details. If you're interested in signing up for the forum newsletter, there is an ability to do that on the bottom page of our website. Pretty easy to get to. You'll just scroll to the bottom and you can sign up that way. And I promise we will not flood your inbox since I don't have the bandwidth to put together a ton of emails all the time. All right, as I alluded to earlier, we'll be doing a webinar on April 5th. That is going to include a number of federal and state organizations with fish passage funding opportunities opening in 2024 and 2025. They'll be there talking about how you can hear about those funding opportunities, what the funding floor and ceilings are, match requirements, and types of eligible projects. In the afternoon, we'll also be hearing from a number of different people about resources that are helpful for putting together and executing a fish passage project. That's going to include presentations on putting together cost shares, presentations on accessing streamlined permitting options through sustainable conservation, as well as some presentations about monitoring methods and effectiveness monitoring depending on the nature of your project. The forum, as I've said, does award funding directly. We get a about $350K in funding annually through the National Fish Habitat Partnership. This does require a one-to-one non-federal match, though we do welcome applications before match is secured. If you've got match pending, that's perfectly fine. We will work with you as your project develops. We try to break that $350,000 amount into a number of different supported projects. So we do tend to support projects in the amount of 50 to 100,000. So it's a small amount. However, we can be a good source of funding for covering cost increases, as well as things that are sometimes difficult to get funding for elsewhere, such as monitoring, assessments, or if you need funds to try to leverage some additional larger pot of funding, we can be a good option for that. We're closed for this year, but it releases again each spring. If you're interested in accessing the forum funding pot, just sign up for our newsletter and announcements will go out in the spring. Something I did want to highlight real quick, which we'll be talking about more at our April 5th webinar, is the Federal Fish Passage Portal, which is again going to be a clickable link here once I provide the presentation for download. You can also get to it just by Googling Federal Fish Passage Portal. That outlines a lot of the federal fish passage funding, which is available through BIL and IRA. There's also state sources across California, including the CDFW FRGP that closes on April 18th, as well as funding through Department of Water Resources, State Coastal Conservancy, and others depending on the nature of your project. So that's all that I had about the California Fish Passage Forum. I did want to open it up for questions quickly before we move on to our next agenda items, since per the usual, we are running just a little bit behind. So feel free to just speak your questions verbally, and I'll just give it a couple minutes before we move on.
Will the webinar on the 5th be recorded?
Correct. Yes, the webinar on the 5th will be recorded and published to the forum website and the forum YouTube channel.
Great. And how long does that usually take to get posted?
I try to post them within the day, if by not the next day.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, my Lord. Scrolling. All right. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. This webinar will be recorded, right? And posted as well on the
Absolutely.
forum's website? Okay, great.
Okay. I'm going to stop my share. We're going to hear next about the passage assessment database and the effort to QA, QC the PAD, which we are here to encourage today. You'll be hearing from Ann Elston. She is a member of the forum through Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, and she is the passage assessment database manager. So thank you, Ann, for being here, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Ann, you are on mute, just so you know.
Thank you. It just let me know that. Yes, thank you for being here. I'll be providing an overview of PAD, Passage Assessment Database. Neil, would you like to say what you might talk about first?
Yeah, I'll be talking about the PAD implementation plan a little bit later.
Andrew?
Hey everyone, I'll be talking a little bit about our CDFW priority lists for fish passage and diversions that are released in. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Okay. Okay, to begin with, I'm gonna turn off my video just during the talk to save some bandwidth. To begin with, so Passage Assessment Database is a statewide inventory of fish passage assessments, mainly in anadromous waters across jurisdictions. It was created in 2002, largely focused on the coast, as you can see at the beginning. And then it has thus been expanded into the Central Valley and up into the Klamath. Currently, there's over 26,000 records, and we rely entirely on other information from other people. That means assessments and even I'll get to some of the information we collect. But currently there's over 100 contributors of data. That's various agencies, organizations, tribes, local watershed groups, and consultants and others. Okay, so passage assessments. They vary from single assessments. Those are conducted at a particular structure or site to broader scale assessments conducted within a whole watershed. You'll see some of those. And then also assessments based on structure ownership. For example, Caltrans has been doing lots of assessments throughout the state at their facilities. So protocols also vary, and they vary from less rigorous professional judgment to more rigorous hydraulic modeling. In between, you have rapid assessment protocols. Those are typically just determine if it's not a barrier or needs further analysis. And if it needs further analysis, it's typically done through green, gray, red filters. And here's an example of CDFW's restoration green, gray, red filter. Green, not a barrier; red, a complete barrier, although conservative. And then gray, the locations that usually have need further analysis, typically through hydraulic modeling, such as fish crossing and heck grass. Hydraulic models predict the flows that are possible by certain species and life stages. And heck grass is usually used for dam and dam-like structures, whereas fish crossing is usually used for road crossing. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Too fast. So PAD. There's a lot of data, but some of the highlights are that it includes both anthropogenic and natural features and barriers. It includes potential and confirmed obstacles, as I mentioned in the previous slide, as the protocols vary. There's still a lot that need further analysis, so those would be the potential obstacles until they're confirmed. And then we include non-barriers and total complete barriers. Non-barriers are those that were assessed generally at the time as not to be an obstacle. Then we have barriers at specific flows into certain species and life stages. Those are what we refer to temporal and partial barriers. And remediations is something we track as well in the PAD. We'll track when it was completed and what was done. And you'll sometimes see those remediations as also listed as not a barrier. We'll point that out. Diversions, we have those, this was added later in the database, but over a decade ago, and we distinguish them between screened and unscreened, and I'll discuss that a little bit later. Excuse me for my coughing. Anyway, so here's the most critical information as I see it in the PAD. At the top, you'll see the, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but basically you have the asterisks highlighting what required information is needed in order to update the PAD. And then other information, although not required, is actually very informative and helpful. So type of site structure, barrier status, the protocol used for assessing barrier status, all of those which I mentioned in previous slides, and then treatment information. As I mentioned, year and what was completed and whether it was completed. And we also track whether the entire status of the treatment. So it might not be completed yet, whether it's in design stage or planned. So location, of course, that's really important to include, to know where the barrier is in the landscape. And this next information is not required, but very useful. So ownership, whether it's owned by a state agency such as Caltrans, or a federal agency, or privately owned, or local municipality. So species and life stages. we have information. It's also available to all of you on all this information is available to all online, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Very informative and helpful for prioritization. We don't have it populated for every record. We are working on adding to that. And at this point, it's not required, but extremely useful. And I encourage people to, when people send me data, to, if they have this information, to fill it out. So have that quality and quantity. We have that too, very limited, also very helpful with prioritization efforts, but it's in the notes field. And then photos, we've probably doubled or tripled the amount of photos that we have in the last decade or more. Thank you to some of you here on the call, actually, who have provided me lots of photos. And they're very useful to show the severity of an area oftentimes. And what's nice is we'll have before and after photos, like on the photos on the right-hand side of this slide. Okay, so site types. These I'm going to show you a few site types that you'll see in Region 2, and they're usually the most prevalent in PAD, or some of them are. I'm not gonna. There's actually several site types in all of in the PAD, so I'm not going to show them all, but here are some. The road crossings, that includes culverts, bridges, low flow crossings, and bridges are barriers in some cases, such as this example. Oops. And then dams, we have both large and small dams in the PAD. In same realm, in diversions, we have both large and small diverters. Oops, sorry about that. I think that the little video thing on the right-hand side is keeping me from scrolling. Okay. Let's go back to, excuse me about that. Okay. So in addition, we have non-structural or natural features or natural barriers. These include waterfalls, obviously this example is showing, but also gradients and other natural barriers. Utility crossings, in that case, they're not very prevalent, but you will see them, and you will see them in Region 2. And there's other crossings that aren't very prevalent that are like this, so they're kind of in the other category. But in this case, usually you'll see like sewer pipes encased in concrete in many cases, and sometimes they're often identified first as a dam because they're not sure what it is. Okay, so barrier status is in the PAD. Here's just going to show you some examples. Clearly not a barrier on this side, on this bridge, and then this arch dam, complete barrier. And these are some examples from the PAD. So this is, in this case, it's a partial barrier, so it's not a barrier to adults, but it is a barrier to juvenile. And then this temporal barrier in these two cases, these two examples, are barriers at low flows, but not high flows. So as I mentioned, we also include diversions and whether they're screened or unscreened. Screened is where it's actually has a screen and it meets both CDFW and NOAA criteria. If it's unscreened, it either doesn't have a screen and or has something that doesn't meet CDFW or NOAA criteria. It might be a trash rack or just doesn't, or something else that just doesn't have a small enough mesh size. So here are some statistics of basically I'm comparing, sorry, I missed one slide, site types in Region 2 with the full PAD. And you can see there's quite a bit of, and these are, shouldn't mention, these are only non-Caltrans records, and the reason being because this review is really focused on non-Caltrans record review. And Neil will actually just explain why that is in his presentation. So diversions, there's quite a bit, as you can see, both in the full PAD, but also in Region 2. And largely the reason the assessments for diversions were largely focused in the Central Valley, where Region 2 is located. We do have diversions throughout the state, here and there in the pad. And another thing is that if you did include Caltrans records, you'd probably have certainly a lot more road crossings show up in this graph. So barrier statuses, likewise, I wanted to compare the full pad with the Region 2 and show you the comparison. You can see, again, a lot of diversions and primarily unscreened. You do have also a lot of complete barrier, total barriers, largely probably because there's large dams here in Central Valley. Okay, so this pad program page on CalFish is the main source of pad information and has you know, links to that. You can actually get access to the data itself and links to the tools in the data access tab. For example, the first one is the map viewer, and that will take you to a preloaded layer and BIOS of pad. And then you have a feature service. It's a nice service because if you're using it in GIS or even ArcGIS online, you don't have to, you can see the latest and greatest pad that was last updated in BIOS. You don't have to download it like you might in this GIS file geodatabase below. Another highlight is the Google Earth KMC file, which I'll talk about looking at pad and Google Earth in the next few slides. So the first tool that you can get from that data access tab is Pad Data Portal. It's fantastic. I was just emailing about this and promoting it again. The reason why it's great is because it is the most up-to-date data of the pad. So it's updated the day after changes are made to the pad. So it's most frequently updated. And then nice is because it's pretty much you could export all the data if you wanted as a CSV or Excel, query it or filter it down to just county, watershed, or even stream. You can, what's nice too is it has this what the red arrow is showing is basically these documents. It means there's document associated with this record that we were provided and is tied to it. And it could be an assessment. And if you click on that, it'll tell you what the document is. And then generally give you access document. If you have trouble accessing the document though, do let me know. My contact information will be the end of the presentation. Okay, so as I mentioned, pad is preload from that tool. The data access is preloaded in layer and BIOS, which is great. So you can just open that link. You see pad right away. This you can zoom in, and here we're zoomed into Region 2. You can click on learn more. Click on each point, learn more about that record. You can also add other layers to overlay, such as CDFW's priority list. So pad and Google Earth, this has been added several years ago, and it's updated at the same time the BIOS layers are updated, and they're updated 3 times a year, by the way, and they should be updated by the end of this month is my plan to send another update to BIOS. This example, what's really nice with Google Earth is, yes, you can zoom in and look at the barrier, but also you can look at the historical imagery. That's what Google Earth allows you to do. And in this case, you can look at the Hare Dam removal. This example is showing Hare Dam removal over time. And now Neil will speak about the implementation plan. Thank you, Neil.
Hi. Can everybody hear me? See my screen?
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Neil.
Excellent. So the pad implementation plan was a strategy to both review the pad and the 26,000 records that it contains and update pad to current data standards methodology. In order to do this, we received input from the Fish Passage Forum Science and Data Committee and is meant to be dynamic, meant to be flexible and change if need be. The steps of this, it began with the publishing of the current PAD data standards and methodology update in 2021. And once that was in place, we then began the implementation, which is a two-prong approach. First, a desktop review, basically all the work that can be done on the desktop to QA/QC the PAD, comparing the PAD with established data sets and bringing it up to current methodology and standards. And then an expert review, which is why we're all here today, which is to bring fisheries experts in each region to have their input and review the PAD records that their watershed contains. So the desktop review, it's meant to accompany the expert review, try to clean up as much as we can before giving you the data to review. This was done in ArcGIS Pro, and based on the PAD methodology and data standards, we tried to be very targeted, looking at just a few specific fields or instances in which to review. So we reviewed potential duplicates, we checked locations to be extra precise, and corrected any stream and downstream name inconsistencies. 13% of all the records in Region 2 were identified as potential duplicates. Primarily, this was where there would be two diversions, two pipes at one location. And in the PAD, we only care about that singular location to be a record, not both diversions. And then stream name changes, about 15–16% of all records had some sort of stream name inconsistency that was corrected. Looking at the PAD desktop review across the multiple regions, regions 2, 3, and 4, we corrected hundreds, if not thousands, of records to bring it up as up-to-date as possible. Most had some sort of change to them. Over 5% of stream name and downstream name changes occurred. Quite a few records had to be moved in Region 2. And then duplicates, about 5%, give or take, were identified as potential duplicates. And most of the records that were changed were from the 1990s. That was far back, or the earlier side of our database. And if anyone's interested, the original fish passage assessments, along with the original photos and photo negatives from the 1990s and later, are all stored in CDFW's warehouse in West Sacramento. So now the expert review. This was to go along with the desktop. We're going region by region, south to north. We've completed 5, 4, 3, 2. This is 2, and after Region 2, we're going to be going to Region 1. In Region 1, there are so many records there, more than any other region, that we are splitting Region 1 webinars to Region 1 coastal and inland. We began by creating regional expert lists, which were developed along with the help from the Fish Passage Forum. And the whole process is, after we create this list, we then survey all of you for your watersheds of expertise. We then host a webinar. And then after this, we'll send out data, PAD data, to be reviewed in each watershed. Again, the focus of this review is on non-Caltrans locations. That's because Caltrans data is facilitated by Caltrans as well as fish packs, and that are considered to be within priority watersheds. So this is a map of all of Region 2, where we have identified these priority watersheds. Those are watersheds from the salmonid recovery plans, as well as the recently released governor's strategy, the California Salmon Strategy for a Hotter, Drier Future. And in these documents, priority watersheds are those which are listed as core, candidate, and watersheds for future reintroduction plans. It doesn't include the entirety of Region 2, although we do accept records throughout the entire state of California. We're trying to really focus this review and what records you're reviewing on these critical watersheds. That's where self-identifying watersheds of expertise comes in. We have an idea of what watersheds you're all knowledgeable about based on where you're based in, but only you know your area best. And so that's why we ask you to self-identify in the Google form. So again, if you've not already done so, please, after the meeting, fill out this Google survey form. It includes giving us basic contact information and then listing the watersheds that you're knowledgeable in, low, medium, high, or none at all. We'll use the information gathered to then create our Excel spreadsheets to then send you the data. And the link is below. Now, looking at the expert review, we've identified fish passage experts. We're hosting these webinars. We're then having you all self-identify your watersheds of expertise. And then on our end, we are going to develop the materials to send to you. So we will send you, after this webinar in the months ahead, an email, as well as instructions to guide you with your review, to show you exactly what is required. And then we will send you both an Excel spreadsheet of pad data and a map, a watershed map for each watershed of pad data that is expected for you to review, just to help you as much as possible. In the Excel spreadsheet data, the required information is in yellow and blue on the left. The white information is great to have as well if you have it, but the yellow and blue is what we're focused on. That includes the barrier type and status, a description of the barrier filled out in the notes field, the precise location, the landowner, structure owner, and if you have it, the treatment info, so if the barrier has been remediated, as well as if it has a fishway, what is the type and status of that fishway. Reiterating again that we will not be reviewing Caltrans sites. So that is anywhere where structure owner is equal to the California Department of Transportation. The data we will send you in your Excel spreadsheets will not contain any Caltrans sites. This is just if you were to go onto BIOS or CalFish and download the pad on your own. You'll see many Caltrans sites within the data, but just know in the data we will send you, there will not be any Caltrans. In the Excel spreadsheet, remember this is kind of a two-prong approach. The focus is on updating pad records and QA/QCing it with your expert opinions. But this is also a great opportunity for you to write in new barriers. If you have any new barriers in your watershed or anything that you know about that is not in the pad, this will just make the pad as robust and useful as possible. So in the Excel spreadsheet 2, we've added drop-down fields, data validation, which is going to help you. It also helps keeps the pad standardized. Only a few specific fields for a few specific options for site type, as well as barrier status. All in yellow is required. And then the fields in blue is if you've reviewed or updated each record. So we would ask that you fill out each field in blue to make sure we know if you've reviewed and or updated each record. Now Andrew will speak prioritization efforts.
Thanks, Anil. Hey everyone, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our CDFW prioritization efforts. Real quick, at the top right hand of your screen here, you'll see a web page that is available to everyone on the CDFW Fisheries Branch website. That little blue square there, rectangle that Neil's highlighting, is the two links that we have to our annual fish passage and water diversion screening priority lists. So if you're curious as to what our priorities through the department are for fish passage and diversion, you're more than welcome to go on the website and check out those two PDFs. That'll give you a little bit more information what CDFW priorities are for fish passage and diversion. Real quick here, I've got a list of priorities, how we rank them according to the following criteria. As you can see here, likelihood to improve fish migration availability, recent fish habitat data, willing partners, landowners, political support, whether or not these are actually contained within a core population, eco-regional significant watershed, and CDFW has a commitment to monitoring and importance within the watershed. At the bottom right hand of this screen, you'll see this is just a snapshot of what one of these lists looks like. It has the county, which it's in, site name, water body, and a pad ID associated, so you can quickly navigate to that pad ID and learn more information about this list. These lists are composed from a larger master list that we maintain in-house. These lists are updated with regional staff expertise annually. From that larger list that we have and maintain with the regions, we choose top 10 priorities per region, per list, and we publish them annually. Like I said, they're linked and available to the public here. And if you have any questions about these lists, you can go ahead and reach out to me. My information will be at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. Also, the cool thing about these lists is they are available on BIOS. If it's something you've worked with before, you know how great it is. If not, I highly recommend you navigate over there and take a look. So you can see here, the 2023 priority list is highlighted on this map. There's lists going back a couple of years. You can see what the differences are as far as where our priorities were, how they changed, if they were mediated, any of those things. Again, these links are available on the website. The link's there in the page. I think it'll be made available later. You can also overlay other layers onto these maps, which make it more efficient to navigate. Next slide.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.
So the next steps after this, if you've not done so after the meeting, please self-identify your watersheds of expertise to help get the ball rolling. This is another link to the Google form, which will be made available after the meeting. Then you're all set. You can wait to receive an emailed watershed packet from the PAD team. That'll include the instructions as well as your Excel spreadsheet of data and watershed maps. Get them in the months ahead. Then, once you receive it, please record your updates in Excel in a timely manner and then send it back to us. We will be following up if we haven't received them back in due course. And then the tentative deadline, early summer 2024, we hope to have all of Region 2 expert review completed. And thank you. This really couldn't have happened without the many supporters and many contributors of data and resources to us. It includes federal, state, contractors, nonprofits, tribes, many, many more that couldn't be included on this page. But it really takes big effort to standardize and collect all of this data from around the state. And now we'll move on to our PAD questions and comments section. If you have any feedback on the PAD plan? Do you have any ideas of other watersheds to add? Are there other partners and experts you want to include? You can write that in the chat. Just tell us. Either way, to be added would be helpful. Thank you.
I will just add something, hi Neil. Some people have already written in the chat and they have some other people they would like added. If there's too many to add in the chat, you're welcome to add the chat. You can also just send the contact information to us too. Thank you.
I have a question about the data you're asking folks for. I noticed that you didn't include the eWorms or the eRIMS ID for diversions in data that you would like, but I think it's very helpful to have that ID number because then you can actually see how large that diversion is, who owns it, etc. If that is reported.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Asia. Yes, we do actually have that recorded in the PAD. It might not be populated everywhere. It wasn't, I would say that part of our process, I mean, Neil mentioned a lot what we did. We also compared, we did compare the PAD, additional QA/QC he did for desktop review is he did compare the diversions in PAD with another database that CDFW had collected as part of, they had a lot of diversion assessments. So we compared the diversion assessments that CDFW had in Region 2 and also in some of the other regions and just made sure that the information is also up to date in the PAD. Some of that has the eRIMS information. I've also collected it myself in eRIMS. We could try to fill that out or have that available too. We can definitely discuss it, but good. This is the kind of feedback we want. Anything that from any of you, I think we need to be added or changed or any feedback on the plan. Thank you.
Yeah, I just pointed out because about 90% of your records don't have that ID for diversions, and it would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some that don't have an ID, but we can try looking them up. It might take some time.
Thank you.
And if we can't populate it, we'll just leave that ID in there and then some other people can add it if as needed.
Thank you, Anne. Are there any other questions for Anne, Neil, and Andrew based on the pad plan presentation?
Yeah, Jim Hoffler here. I kind of didn't understand the name of that diversion database you were talking about. Could you tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
sorry. It was actually called the Fish Passage, CDFW's Fish Passage and Fish Screen database, or it was a part of their assessment program. The assessment program is no longer operating, but that's what it was. George Edwards was the last person to manage that database at CDFW, no longer CDFW, now retired. But yes, so that's what we're using. That was, I think, collected up until, I forget, a couple of years ago. So we're using that just to cross-reference, make sure that the pad is updated. Neil might have also mentioned that the database collected information. It was a little different than pad. Pad collects information for each site, and that collected each survey. So we're cleaning up some of the duplicates essentially in the pad, but a lot of them were diversions in the pad.
And when Asia was talking, she had a name for that database. I think she said
Oh
something.
yeah, sorry, the ERIMS. She's talking about the State Water Control Board. And I forget what the acronym is, but it's their list of legal diverters, essentially. And it's available on the online. If you even I can put, if you would like me, I can give you the chat and put it in the chat. Yeah, I'll do that so you can see it. But anyway, you can look at the data. It's quite useful. You can either see it geospatially from ERIMS, or you can search by app, ID or location.
And I just put it in the chat. ERIM stands
Perfect.
for Electronic Water Rights Information Management System.
Sorry, Anne, one other question. How do you see it geospatially? I haven't been able to find that.
Oh yeah. Let me see if I can pull that up right now. Oh, it's just in the link she sent you. It's the GIS. It's the second link in the database water rights viewer. The one I can share my screen. So I can show you. Let's see, share screen. Yeah, there we go. So you can see it right here. And I'm happy to assist you, also, if any of you can contact me later, or any of us. It's right here, the web mapping application.
Oh,
That's
fabulous. I just totally missed that. Thank
That's
you.
okay. I use kind of both. Go back and forth.
And without taking us down into a deep hole of water rights analysis here.
Yeah.
So in this database, you mentioned the word legal, right? So
in ERIMS, yes.
In ERIMS, right? So there are some diversions that go way back in time. In other words, there's pre-1914 rights and there's post-1914
They
rights.
have actually both. I'm sorry. They both have pre-1914 rights, I think, in their database, as well as, I suppose, what they have a app for, water right for.
Okay.
Water right would be the correct terms of legal, but yeah, and they have a water right.
As ordained. Yes, anyhow. So where I was going with this is there's also some diversions that do not in and of themselves for that particular diverter have a water right.
That's correct.
But they are legal in a way because a water district, pardon me? Because a water district is sending water down the creek, and a customer of that water district is taking some of that water out of the creek, and therefore that's legal, right? So in this database, do they include that type of diversion that's not founded on an individual property owner or diverter's water right, but is okay because they're paying the water district to pump the water out of the creek?
Yeah, I think that's a good question for someone at a state water control board. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
I'm familiar only to a point of ERIMS. But it's not a database I manage. I'm more familiar with the pad, what the pad
Okay,
contains.
all right, okay, that's cool. We
Yes.
can make inquiries with the people that run
Yeah,
the
that would
database.
be
That's
great.
fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Jim. So I've got a few items for us to work through. So
Holly, do you mind? I know there's no more questions, but I just wanted to shout out to some of the people on this call. I
yeah,
mean, many of
please.
you probably have heard from me, but two people. One is Alex Jones, who works for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He used to be a part of the forum's Science and Data Committee. He was instrumental in reviewing the plan as well at the time of the PAD plan, QAQC, and he himself did some QAQC and also helped get, we didn't discuss the whole history of the plan. There was not enough time for that and all that we've done. But basically, he also got a student helper to help too. So I just wanted to have that call out, as well as Mark Gard, who's he mentioned he's CDFW engineer, working on fish pastures throughout the state, and he been fantastic. He did a lot of the filling in all the blank stream names. We had lots of stream names and downstream names that were blank, and he filled them all in. And he also updated a lot of dams that were listed as unknown passage status. And he also has gone a lot in the field and provided me a lot of information on remediation. So, and then Casey Horgan down in Southern California, who was working in Central Valley with Caltrans, he's done a lot of assessments and given me data. So I'm sorry I can't call you all out, all of you guys, but thank you for anyone who's provided me data. I just really want to thank that. But I just want to highlight some of the people who've also worked on the PAD data plan. And another thing to say is, it may have not been mentioned, but the reason why we did the desktop review was really we're trying to review as much as we can that we're comfortable with. So that you as reviewers, we're not asking you to make a ton of changes to like the stream names and the other things we think we can make changes to. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. Same is why we have the drop down lists in the Excel spreadsheets and why we create the data sets we do. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I see Marissa McCrew in the chat has their hand up. Marissa, go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. So fish screens are included within the PAD review. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So I recently watched a presentation given by Danny Didrikson of Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And yeah, these fish screen diversions typically, as was said, they meet CDFW and NOAA criteria that are typically fine for juvenile salmonids, but it was found that they're not fine for larval lamprey and other small bodied fish. And I know I work in Region 1, so yeah, I'm thinking about it in Region 1 geographical area, but lamprey are also, they're throughout the entire state of California down to Baja. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention.
No, I think that's great attention. You're right. We are aware of that actually. I don't know yet if did he talk about someone working on screening criteria Pacific lamprey? I think I heard they're working on it, but not yet available. You're right that it's good to point out that I didn't mention that the screening criteria is specific to salmonids, and I did mention how PAD is mainly focused on anadromous waters. So the main focus, we do have lots of barriers to salmonids, but we do have lots of barriers to Pacific lamprey. We haven't, I haven't seen any assessments, at least in California, maybe it's forthcoming, of information on diversions that might be a problem to Pacific lamprey. I'm sure they are, as you mentioned. I have heard that too. But if you or any of your colleagues or anyone else know about that, feel free to add that in even in the review when you review it. in the review or comments. I mean, I think it's useful to note, and we've modified this database, I should just over time. Like we've modified it. I didn't mention, but the forum was instrumental in this too, and others working on it, and even Stuart Reed, who's a lamprey expert, Pacific lamprey expert, in modifying the PAD to incorporate Pacific lamprey. So we've modified it over time. I mentioned even how the versions weren't first in PAD, so we can certainly figure out how to do that once we receive the data information. Does that answer your question, Marissa?
That does. And yeah, I'm still learning a lot about this PAD world and like just fish passage database world. But and yeah, I was aware that like Stuart Reed and Damon Goodman like brought this to the attention of like CDFW and Caltrans. But I believe some of that data was just included in the metadata on those databases, and I don't know like how many folks here like read through the metadata.
Yeah, so I don't remember the metadata, but we just to let you guys all know, yeah, it's probably not a lot of people read through it. Thank you for reading through it. I appreciate it. But we have included a lot of you can actually, I'm happy if you guys, anyone is interested, I can show you how to filter, or if you're just interested in Pacific lamprey, there's a way to filter that information out. But yeah, like Stuart conducted a lot in the Central Valley assessments. And there's been some assessments also from some other consultants and others and tribes on the North Coast too. Kind of.
And something that comes to mind for me that we could do is potentially we could record you filtering the PAD for Pacific lamprey, and we could post that on the forum website and the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we've got, I think, during webinars like this, it's always really helpful to provide some opportunity for people to give us their perspectives and information. So we do actually have a few polls for you to do. They're really quick. They're just through Zoom. So I'm going to launch those, and you can tell us a little bit about your familiarity with the PAD, how much you've interacted with it. And then we're also going to solicit a little bit of interest about the platform the forum could provide for discussing priority lists based on what we heard from Andrew at CDFW about their prioritization efforts. We want to keep that conversation going. So I'm going to launch these polls. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to fill out each one of them. They'll be pretty straightforward. And then we're going to move into the roundtable discussion where we can open it up to discuss how things are going in Region 2. So I'm going to start with familiarity and use of the PAD. So we would just love to hear a little bit about how familiar you are with it. Before this webinar, if you had heard of it, how often you use it, if you've provided updates to the PAD. So go through and answer those 3 questions. I'll give us, I would say, 2 minutes each. We've got 2 polls to do, so this is the first one. And even if you're joining the webinar from out of California, or you have not used the PAD before, or think that's not relevant to you, you can still go ahead and answer those questions. It's still helpful for us to hear if this is something that you've either heard of or used, even if those answers are no. Okay, I'm going to close that one. Thank you guys for that. sharing our results here. Looks like about 40% of us are familiar with the pad. Another 40% are somewhat familiar, and we've got about 17% unfamiliar. Most people use the pad either sometimes or rarely in their work. Quite a few people have never used it in their work, but we do have some respondents who use it often. And we've got about 31% of people saying they've provided updates and 69% of people saying they have not provided updates. Maybe those numbers will change after our expert review after this webinar. So thank you guys. All right, so the other thing we wanted to discuss is we've heard quite a bit about prioritization today and just in general in this work, how those priority lists are determined, what ends up on those priority lists, how that can be discussed and synthesized between different organizations is a thing the forum, the California Fish Passage Forum is very interested in. So we would like to hear from you guys in how interested you would be in having a platform to discuss prioritization of fish passage efforts in different watersheds. Andrew, would you like to kind of discuss that idea at all, or do you feel like you covered it in your presentation earlier?
Maybe just kind of revisit the idea that there are a lot of us kind of working on this landscape together, and I know that CDFW annually publishes this list for passage and diversion, and I feel like I get, I get folks reaching out to me asking where we stand on this, how we plan to move forward, and what our approach and goals are. And I think there's a lot of other entities on the landscape doing the same thing. And as opposed to just meeting individually or in smaller groups and meeting settings, I think it'd be easier to have one central nexus for us to kind of have those conversations. I think it would kind of save us some time and hopefully expedite the process of remediating some of these fish passage concerns and priorities that we have. So I'm just kind of floating the idea out there to see how folks feel about having one place for these conversations to happen. And I think this is a great start for it. So your participation here is greatly appreciated. So thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so I just have a short answer poll up right now that can range in answer from like, yes, do it. You can also provide a little bit more detail there, or you can say like, no, not interested. I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity to let us know how you feel about that idea. I'm going to leave that poll open for probably about another minute. All right, I'm going to be closing up that poll in just a second. So if you're still typing, finish that up. All right, thank you all. We had 26 people participate in the poll. And since it's a short answer, it's a little hard for me to share quick statistics on it, but we are going to take your feedback and we're going to use that in our efforts to develop this idea. I would recommend signing up for the California Fish Passage newsletter. Oftentimes that's where we'll publish news of opportunities for meetings and discussions that will help fulfill those needs. And thank you guys for answering that poll. So I'm just going to go back real quick into my presentation. So we have heard from we've heard from me about the California Fish Passage Forum. We've heard from Ann and Neil about the PAD plan effort. Now we're going to be moving into our roundtable discussion focused on Region 2. So I've kind of structured this in two parts. I feel like that can kind of help keep us on track. So our objective here is to have an option to discuss priorities, projects that are ongoing in design or in implementation, and successes, as well as issues encountered in advancing passage projects in Region 2. Part 1, we'll talk about ongoing activities and successes, and then we're going to finish off with issues that we're encountering. Our first section of the discussion, and I would just open it up for everybody to feel free to, you're welcome to raise your hand and wait to be called on if you would like, but you're also welcome to just freely speak about what is going on for you in Region 2. This could include what inventories and assessments are being done, what projects are being done, any monitoring efforts that you're using to inform those projects, as well as successes to share. These props are to kind of get the juices flowing. However, if you've got other things to discuss, feel free to just share your truth. I'm opening it up to everyone.
Our goal at the moment is looking into unscreened diversions and trying to identify which watersheds sort of have the most unscreened diversions and what the state of those diversions is, which is why we're trying to connect that with the ERIMS data. So that's going to be really helpful. And so that is an ongoing project for us. I have successfully been able to get a map up that maps out the data that I have, including both the PAD and ERIMS data. It combines them both, which is nice because then I know not only, where the location of these are, what type of barrier they pose, sort of, are they in critical habitat, but then I can also combine that with the information about how much water is being diverted, sort of to give an idea of how large these diversions are, and that can give us a better idea of what watersheds within the region to target. And so that is going well. We're sort of still in the targeting phase, but our hope is to remediate a good chunk of these unscreened diversions within the next 5 years.
Thank you, Asia. Appreciate your perspectives. Since we don't have our videos on, or it's harder to see who we are, when you are shouting out, just say who you are and where you're from. So Asia, I believe you're with WRA.
No, I'm with Water Audit California. Apologies.
Oh no, you're good. Sorry, I just realized yes, thank you. So Asia with Water Audit California. Appreciate you, Asia. What else is going on?
So my name is Jim Hoffler. I'm with Friends of Auburn Ravine. That's that little creek that flows from the town of Auburn about 34 miles westerly and enters the Sacramento River near Verona. And I have a question about flashboard dams. I'm just curious to know if anybody on the call has any answers about this particular problem I'm going to present right now. Placer County Water Agency did some studies on one of the dams they operate along Auburn Ravine, in particular the Newmore Dam, where they had already put in a notch in the surface of the flashboard dam so that the flow was concentrated instead of being spread across about 50 feet of wooden boards at the crest of the dam. The water flow was condensed down into about 6 or 8 feet. So it was a deeper flow, a faster flow as a result of that notch. But after they had put that notch in, they did some studies of entrainment into the canal that exits the creek. And unfortunately, from their studies, it's very clear that a whole bunch of baby salmon did not find that notch and preferred to go into the unscreened diversion. Now, those fish turned out to be very lucky fish because Placer County Water Agency caught them, counted them, measured them, and put them back in the creek. But they did find within a 2-week period in the month of May, year before last, that I'm sorry, it was last May actually. In a 2-week period in the month of May, they had almost 1,000 fall run Chinook salmon juveniles that did not go over the notch. They went into the canal, and in regard to those little fish, luckily got caught and put back in the creek. And then in another study they did the year before, 2 years before that, they did the study for almost the entire month of May, and it was almost 1,700 fall run Chinook salmon that went into the canal and would have died were it not for the fact the counting was going on. So I'm curious to know if anybody has heard about, knows about any technologies for doing a better job of encouraging juvenile salmon to move downstream past a flashboard dam, something that works better than a notch in the top of the dam. And I can take the answer offline if you wish. Okay.
I guess
Nobody.
just the first thing I can think of, this is Mark Guard, is, putting the notch on the far side of the dam from where the canal diversion is, that might help reduce the number of fish that end up in the diversion.
Yeah, and in fact, in that particular case, the notch and the canal were only 6 or 8 feet apart. Yeah, good point.
Does anybody else have perspectives to share with Jim regarding the flashboard dam issue?
Okay, thanks.
No worries, Jim. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. And Megan, I saw that you had your hand up. Megan from American Rivers. Would you like to speak up?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Holly. I have to jump from this call in a minute, but I just wanted to describe an inventory assessment that American Rivers is doing. While not focused on Region 2, the project is statewide. And essentially what we've done is we've taken all the excellent information that's been incorporated into the passage assessment database and then collected various prioritization criteria from a number of state and federal agency partners, as well as some tribes and tribally led organizations, to try to see if we could identify alignment among priority dam removal projects and barrier remediation projects. And what our next step is in that process is seeking out those projects that would be feasible. In other words, those dams are likely to be removed with minimal effort. So this is unlikely to apply to large scale dams or dams that provide significant water supply, but could be, but have owners who could be amenable to dam removal projects. And so through that process, we've currently identified 2 projects in the Little Shasta River watershed. We found some agricultural landowners who are amenable to dam removal projects. And we believe we've identified an additional 167 potentially feasible projects. And so the whole goal of that effort is to just simply seek a faster pace of waterway restoration by focusing on some of these smaller projects that can provide can cause aquatic fragmentation, but also may be able to take advantage of certain permit streamlining opportunities that our friends at CDFW and the Water Board have developed under their Cutting the Green Tape initiatives in recent years.
Thank you, Megan. It's excellent to hear about that work being done. That's phenomenal. And similar to what we're doing here today, I'm certain that you are going to be looking for expert review to help define some of those smaller dam removal projects from people who have on the ground knowledge. Is that something you're going to be looking for?
Yes, thanks, Holly. We are currently right now we're working with an entity called the Southeast Aquatic Resources Partnership. I understand that they're from the Southeast, and so they have limited experience working in California. However, they did secure significant funding from the Fish and Wildlife Service to create a national dam inventory. And that inventory has significant functionality, including the ability to create apps. And so right now, SARP, as American Rivers contractor, is in the process of developing an app that would allow folks to enter information directly into a GIS database where you'd be able to mouse over various barriers that have been identified as priorities and simply type into various fields your information about a dam and whether or not you feel it could potentially be feasible for removal based on your expertise in that watershed. And for those who are unaware, SARP is just another NIFHAP. So they have fairly deep expertise on fish passage issues.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, the Southeast Aquatic Resources Partnership is a really excellent fish habitat partnership that does a lot of good work. Well, it's wonderful to hear about that effort being done, and we'll be looking forward to hearing how we can be involved and help make that good list of sort of low-hanging fruit dams a bit more of a reality. That's wonderful. All right, I don't see any hands up, so feel free to just shout it out. I'm, would also be interested to hear not just on projects that are, prospective or ongoing, but also on any sort of monitoring programs or results that you have on your projects in Region 2. Anybody who's, been doing effectiveness monitoring, have you been seeing results over the course of your projects? Jeff, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi, thanks for calling on me. Jeff Jenkins, environmental scientist, fisheries biologist with Department of Water Resources. Most of our efforts are focused in the Yolo bypass. And apologies if maybe I should have waited for a different prompt. But considering projects that are being done, we're in construction on what's being referred to as the Big Notch project in the Fremont Weir. And the primary goal of that project is to bring juvenile salmonids onto the Yolo bypass floodplain for rearing. And looking at the PAD database, I'm noticing there are probably 25 plus unscreened diversions and pumps throughout the bypass, all down the tow drain before any of those juveniles would get to the cash slough complex. And I'm wondering if there's any way that this database is also being used for some enforcement on these unscreened diversions. They're known. Is there anything being done to, potentially fraud these landowners to screen the diversions and pumps?
Hi, Jeff. This is Asia from Water Audit California. That is sort of what we do. So that is part of our goal, right? Is to help with getting these diversions screened. We have a history of doing that through litigative methods. We're hoping that this process we can do a little bit more collaboratively by potentially getting a little bit more into the construction side ourselves. But I'd be happy to talk with you more, especially regarding this particular site Because again, right, in targeting these areas, we're hoping to identify these priority targets, and it sounds like that's pretty important to make sure those are done before you start putting juvenile salmon on the bypass.
Cool. Thanks. I didn't realize that there were some efforts going on. That's great. Yeah, who did you say you're with? Water?
I'm with Water Audit. I'll message you in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Per Jeff's point, these prompts are simply meant to, give you some ideas for things that could be shared, but they are certainly not limiting. So if you've got something outside the realm of these prompts that you want to share regarding things that are being done or things that you want to be done, feel free to mention it. David, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm Dave Thomas. I'm a senior fisheries biologist with eCorp Consulting, located here in Rockland, California. And just throwing out a little success story. We recently finished a project here on Auburn Ravine that Jim Hoffler just mentioned, and he was actively involved in that, he and his group. We replaced Nevada Irrigation District's Hemp Hill Dam with it's a nature-like roughened ramp is what it's called. And it's basically we replaced the dam, and it was a flashboard dam, and the diversion with a cone screen. And so now it's finally complete. It was completed in 2022. We did some repair work here in 2023 in October. And while we're out there doing the repair work and doing our fish rescues, we actually did collect some Pacific lamprey adults. And it is suitable habitat for Chinook salmon, fall run, and steelhead, and Pacific lamprey. So we're now entering our post-construction monitoring phase, which will start up here in a few weeks. We're going to be looking upstream primarily for fall run juveniles and also for Pacific lamprey. So just wanted to throw that out. That was also, we got that permitted through the Placer County Conservation Program, which helped to expedite and reduce the cost of the permitting on that.
And Jim Hoffler here in the under the topic of giving credit where credit is due. Thank you for the mention, Dave, but I should tell everybody that Friends of Auburn Ravine was an advocate for that. But the real work was eCorp and Nevada Irrigation District. The Wildlife Conservation Board came in with a great grant for it. The Placer County Conservation Plan, as Dave mentioned a minute ago, Westcon Construction. So it was definitely a big team effort. And it's really a good success, because in our first year of salmon surveys after that fix was done, the dam was replaced with a roughened rock ramp and a screen was put onto the canal. That was in the fall of 2022. Our wading walking surveys of the creek shows that the statistics for that particular dam were flipped. By that I mean before the fix was in, when the dam was still there, our studies, Cal Fish and Wildlife studies, showed that in some years, not all years, but in some years, the best you would get is 7 to 10% of the salmon could get over that dam. If the water was just right at the right time and the fish were there, some years you get 7 to 10% past that dam, and they could get up to about 5.5, 6 miles of good spawning area upstream. After the dam was removed, replaced with that rough and rock ramp, we had 80% of the salmon getting past that location. Some stayed downstream because there is some good spawning area downstream, but 80% were able to get on upstream. So definitely a big statistical success.
Hi, Jim. Just also throwing in there, again, credit where credit's due. That project did come about because Water Audit California sued Nevada Irrigation District.
Yes, excuse me, Asia. Yes. The thing that really got things off dead center, because Nevada Irrigation District had been kind of looking at it and studying this, but really not doing anything for a long time. And Water Audit California came in, filed a lawsuit against Nevada Irrigation District for a violation of various state of California laws. And a judge actually ordered Nevada Irrigation District to get with the program and do what they should have done quite a while back. And so they did get it done, but it did take a serious nudge from Water Audit California to get action. So yeah, thank you to Water Audit California on that for sure.
Thank you. That really does go to show the value of leveraging various expertise and purviews of our different agencies and organizations to really get the work done. So thank you. Is there a website or a report or some other way that we can hear more about this flashboard dam remediation project?
For that one at Hemphill Dam, a man named Steve Hubbard, who has a small company called Gold Country Images, not Gold Country Media, that's a different thing. Gold Country Images has about a half-hour little movie that is just about ready for distribution. Should be available, maybe sometime in April. He'll be distributing that, so that recaps the whole thing there for you in a half hour, with an additional half hour that gets into some detail about the actual construction project. So
That's
that'll be available
fantastic. I'll
soon.
keep an eye out for it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll add that NID does have a web page for this, and I'm trying to, oh, there it goes. It won't load, but now it is loading. I'll place it, I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, NID didn't really mention Water Audit California in their write-up. But anyhow, Water Audit was a big part of making that happen.
And I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, no, that's great. I do know that you guys were working on it for a long time, planning. It's nice to hear everyone who was involved. One thing I mentioned in the pad is that we include what has been done, like completed, but other information we include in the notes is we'd like to have any information on monitoring. So, David, if you have information, or even Jim, on monitoring or any successes, we can include that in the pod. I mean, I think that's always great. I love to include that, once the project is done. Sometimes they fail, but it's wonderful to hear when they succeed so well, like you said. So it doesn't have to be now about the monitoring, but like in the next few years, we can also add some stuff about what the monitoring is showing too.
Yeah. And of course, 1 year of monitoring does not
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
doesn't exactly prove anything.
Yes.
You got to go for like 4 or 5 years to see what
Yeah.
really the impact was.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That's actually an excellent segue into our next bit of our presentation, or of our discussion. I hate to leave things on kind of a negative note, but I want to do one more poll where we talk about not just the successes, but some of the things that are still need to be fixed, I guess, to or improved upon to help us do these projects and assessments. So just one more bit of more polls. There you are. So one more bit of information, we just want to solicit is what is hampering your projects? No, not at all. Go ahead, Garrett. Feel free to introduce yourself and speak your truth, as they say.
Thanks, Holly. My name is Garrett Altman, and I'm with the nonprofit, the Environmental Policy Innovation Center. And my program provides pro bono technical assistance to communities, tribes, stakeholders who are interested in developing fish passage projects, not just in California, but anywhere in the West. If folks are interested in connecting me with folks who might be interested to develop a project but don't know where to start, I can provide application assistance, identifying funding opportunities, aligning permitting processes, and basically everything in this poll right now. And happy to assist and collaborate with any of you. I'll put my email in the chat as well, so folks have my contact, or I already did, but I'll do it again here. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. And as expected, we've got a relatively even spread. A lot of these issues would be easier to solve if there was only one thing holding us up, but as is the case with a lot of things, it's not that simple. So looks like funding availability, match, and applications tends to be a large holdup. Permitting is the next most responded. followed by identifying locations and priorities, as well as quite a few for other. I didn't want to give us a million different options, but I did want to give people a chance to chat about other things that are also holding them up. This is similar to our last prompt, just a time for us to chat about the things that are affecting us in our regions. So would anybody who answered other like to talk about what other things other than these three are holding up your projects? David, go ahead.
I was going to add willing landowners.
Yeah, certainly. As that, do a lot of the projects you guys prospect and are a lot of the projects you're thinking about on private property? Does that tend to be a pretty common interaction or hurdle you gotta jump through?
It is, yes, and you combine that with, funding availability. A lot of these landowners don't have the money to do the fixes that would allow fish passage. That's tied into permitting as well, which is what we do here at ECOR. We do a lot of environmental permitting, CEQA, and I can tell you firsthand, we all know it's very expensive. So it's great to see that some of the agencies are looking for ways to streamline that process and make it easier and less expensive, but there could be a lot more of that. One of the other things I think in terms of funding availability is, we're often excluded as consultants from pursuing those types of fundings. And often they explicitly exclude permitting from a lot of the funding sources. So you add all those together and it makes it very expensive, especially for a private landowner. Unless they have a lot of money, it's very difficult.
Yeah, David, thank you. That's something we've encountered here with some of our forum applications is landowners submitting applications directly, which, it's apparent that it's a huge administrative lift. And if you are not in that world, that can be very challenging. So thank you to Garrett and anybody else whose organizations help provide application services or other administrative services to help them put their resources together and present their project in an attractive way to a funder.
I would just add, working with the local resource conservation district is usually a good way to get an entity that can apply for funding.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Do we have people on the line here who are from resource conservation districts? I know I saw a few earlier in the webinar. I don't know if they've already hopped off. Oh, well, maybe not, but if you are, thank you for your work. Yeah, all right. I'm just gonna close down the poll for now and just continue to encourage perspectives. We've got a lot of people from different types of agencies with different purviews on the call currently. So I would be interested to hear where your agency is looking to help either streamline, solve, or minimize the impact of some of these challenges. If you are trying to do that programmatically within your organization, with the way you operate, or if you're partnering with somebody to help collaboratively solve some of these challenges.
I would say for CDFW, the Cutting the Green Tape program is probably the biggest thing that has been done to try to streamline permitting.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I've heard. I attended the Interagency Fish Passage Partner Workshop in Charleston, South Carolina, in last December. Garrett was there. I'm sure a few other folks on the call may be familiar with that event and heard quite a bit about the CDFW Cutting the Green Tape program as a sort of flagship inspiration for some other places across the country. So I'm glad to hear that that is seeing positive result.
Yeah, I'd second that comment as well, Holly and Chris. I believe it's Christian Romberger at CDFW. He just presented this past week to the Southern California Steelhead Coalition and really went through the tools that are applicable through that program. And organization I'm with continues to highlight the Cutting Green Tape initiative nationally on what can be done to further facilitate restoration projects.
Well, I guess, you know, as we're starting to kind of naturally wind down, it seems, I would just prompt the group with what you've got going on this coming spring. Do you have a project that you're designing? Do you have a implementation project? You're starting to get a shovel in the ground? Are you doing field assessments and getting your waders out of the closet? For me, this spring comes with a lot of administrative work, but like I mentioned in November, we're likely doing a in-person meeting in Sacramento, and I'm going to be planning a outreach event, which hopefully includes a field tour as well as community outreaching for some notable fish passage projects. I forget who was on with the Fremont Weir Yolo bypass project, but I'll certainly be reaching out to you for possibility of a, that was, I think, one of our Jeffs. We've got three Jeffs on the line. I believe that was one of the Jeffs. All right, Haley, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. You're right. It is one of the Jeffs. It's Jeff Jenkins is on my team, and yeah, we're part of the group that's implementing the Fremont Weir Big Notch project. We also have another project coming up down the pipeline here. It's the Agricultural Road Crossing number 4 project. We're at 95% design for that project right now. Just looking at plans and specs, just multitasking here. But that project is likely to go out to bid this spring or summer with the goal of completing it either this summer or next summer. And I know that project is listed in the PAD database as I think it's a partial barrier in the Yolo bypass. So that's an exciting update on our end.
Thank you, Haley. That is an exciting update. And Jeff, I see you do have your hand up. Thank you for forgiving me not remembering which of the Jeffs you were.
Yeah, no worries. I just threw my hand up real quick so you could identify me. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Does anybody else want to share what they're working on in the coming months?
Yeah, I was going to add, I'm also on the team with Jeff and Haley here. And we have some other team members on the call. Not this year with R4, but next year we also have Agricultural Road Crossing 1 and Supplemental Fish Passage, hopefully going to construction next year. These are also components of the Big Notch project and also honestly fish passage project. Kind of supporting components of Big Notch, as is R4.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, we are just about at time. Thank you guys for attending. Back to kind of the purpose of this webinar is please do fill out that Google form indicating your watersheds of expertise. We popped the form in the chat a few times. Again, it shouldn't take you too long. That just really helps our efforts. Just going back to find it. There it is. Okay, in the chat one more time. If you haven't done it yet, please do it in the next day or two. Also, we will be emailing you out a expert review packet. Anne or Neil, do you guys just want to re-summarize what our experts can expect as far as the expert review process that we'll be sending to them?
Yeah, I think you mean, yes. We'll be sending you an email. I'll have some instructions and just simple instructions, and with an Excel spreadsheet for the review and a map. The Excel spreadsheet, I will say, has links to bios anyway, so you could look up the location that way, and it has lat long in it as well. Sorry, latitude, longitude. But the in addition, we have a map that's helpful, we think, that has the same records on it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anne. And our timeline for getting those review back.
Yeah, we have early summer is what we put on it. I thought that it was on one of Neil's slides. We still need to compile that information together, so it won't be right away after this webinar. We've been diligently working on Region 1 desktop review as well.
Thank you, Anne. That actually segues really well into sort of our final items, which are to keep an eye out on the California Fish Passage Forum website, as well as your email if you're subscribed to our email list. Those of you who put in the chat that you specifically would like a invite to the Region 1 Passage Assessment Database webinar, thank you. We will take those, take your contacts from the chat and make sure that you are on our list. And feel free to contact Anne, myself, Neil, or Andrew with updates to the pad, people that you want invited to the webinar, or any other questions you have after our presentation today. I hope everybody has a really wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for participating. This webinar will be recorded and put on the California Fish Passage Forum website. And we look forward to seeing those of you in our Region 1 webinar set for early May sometime. Date to be determined, but keep an eye out. We'll publish it when we know it.